What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Bubba Rose Show. Very excited to be back with you after a lengthy 6-month hiatus. Life has been very busy between my day job, being a dad and everything I have going on, but it's great to be back. And we have an absolutely awesome story that we're bringing to you on this episode, which is episode 17 of the program. It's been several months, but some of you may recall on episode 9 back in early March of this year, I visited with Dr. Chris Croft. And Dr. Croft is an assistant professor of sport management at the University of Southern Mississippi down in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And prior to that, he spent around 25 years coaching college basketball and was at some pretty prestigious institutions. But, one of the institutions he spent some time at was USI, the University of Southern Indiana, which is located in Evansville. And while at USI, he had the privilege of crossing paths with an amazing young man by the name of Bryce Weiler. After Coach Cross told me about Bryce's story, I knew immediately that I wanted to have him on the program. And I reached out recently, and Bryce literally got back to me within a matter of minutes, which I greatly appreciated. And right now, let's go out to Indiana, as I'm honored to be joined by Bryce Weiler. Bryce, welcome into the show. I'm really looking forward to our conversation this afternoon.
Hi, Bubba. Thank you for having me on. I'm not living in Indiana anymore. I'm not in Evansville. I'm in Claremont, Illinois, but one of the bordering states to Indiana.
Absolutely. And I've certainly heard of Claremont, Illinois. What part of the state is Claremont?
That's in the southern part of the state, about 30 minutes outside of Vincennes, Indiana, just across into Illinois. Vincennes has a good men's junior college basketball team that's always competing for the junior college tournament in Hutchinson, Kansas.
Gotcha. I have been to Indiana once in my life, and that was back in the spring of 2015. My wife, she actually attended college at Indiana Wesleyan University. And during spring break of 2015, like I mentioned, we headed up there to see her roommate from college. And she actually lives just right outside of Dayton, as her husband, Neil Sullivan, is the director of athletics at the University of Dayton. So that was a really fun trip. Got to visit, Hoosier Gym in Knightstown, Indiana, which was a lot of fun, being a huge fan of not only basketball, but the movie Hoosiers.
Wow, that sounds like you had a good trip over to Indiana.
Absolutely, and I look forward to going back sometime. But, Bryce, just talk about, first of all, before we dive into your story, just talk about your relationship with Coach Croft and, what he means to you.
I became friends with Coach Croft in 2014 whenever he was at the University of Southern Indiana running their sports management program. He came to an Evansville men's basketball game, and Coach Croft saw me sitting on the Evansville basketball bench, which I'd been doing since 2010 when I started going to school at Evansville, thanks to the invitation of the former Aces head men's basketball coach, Marty Simmons, who's now coaching over at Eastern Illinois. And Coach Croft saw me shooting free throws before the game on the court and came down and talked to me. And we talked about friends we had in common in college basketball. He had me speak to his sports management class at USI that he was teaching that year. And we've been friends for 7 years now.
That's awesome. Look forward to the day when I'm able to meet Dr. Croft in person, but definitely think a lot of him, the conversations we've had on the phone, as well as the podcast back in early March of this year. But now, Bryce, before we really take a deep dive into your story and talk about some of the awesome things you've had a chance to accomplish and be involved in, just tell our listeners your story as far as being born prematurely and some of the challenge you've faced throughout your life.
I was born almost 4 months premature, and for the first few days of my life, I could see when I was in the hospital, but due to either too much light or too much oxygen, it caused the retinas in my eyes to detach, which caused me to be blind. Growing up, I had many eye surgeries to possibly give me vision in my eyes at one point in time. So we'll see if that ever happens. And I just grew up listening to sports on the radio, listening to Brian Barnhart commentating Fighting Illini football and basketball, Don Fisher commentating Indiana Hoosiers football and basketball, as well as Mike Shannon commentating for the St. Louis Cardinals. And it was listening to those broadcasters that brought sports to life for me. I created a visual picture of the game taking place on the court or the field, but it was thanks to Marty Simmons that I was able to really be able to experience college basketball and college athletics with sitting on the Evansville basketball bench.
Yeah, that was an awesome story. Look forward to hearing more about that. Definitely very familiar with Evansville's basketball tradition, the Purple Aces. I'm actually a big fan of East Carolina University, and the Pirates have played Evansville a few times down through the years. I guess maybe the most recent meeting was back in, I want to say it was March of 2013, late March, in the CIT, the CollegeInsiders.com tournament. And Evansville was very good that year. They actually defeated Wichita State twice, and that was the year the Shockers went all the way to the Final Four.
Yes, Evansville really had a good year that year. Wichita State under Greg Marshall lost to my friend, Coach Rick Pitino, and his Louisville Cardinals that year. And Louisville ended up winning the national championship, and Coach Pitino gave me a championship ring and cut me down a piece of the championship net. But Evansville had a good run in the CIT that season of 2013. Then in the 2014-2015 season, Evansville actually won the college basketball invitational. And then the following year, they lost to Northern Iowa by 2 points in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. But I've always enjoyed listening to East Carolina athletics. I listen to their football, their men's and their women's basketball games on my phone.
That's awesome. So you're obviously very familiar with the voice of the Pirates, Jeff Charles, and Jeff Charles is actually a native of the Midwest. I believe he's originally from Ohio. Also has a summer home up in Michigan, and spends some time up there. I believe it's in the UP, that region of Michigan. And so he's someone that I think an awful lot of, has an excellent voice, obviously, but does a tremendous job describing the action. And he's been at East Carolina since the late 80s.
He's a good broadcaster. He does a great job creating visual pictures of the game taking place on the court or the field. And I enjoy listening to his East Carolina broadcast.
Here, after we're through recording this podcast, I will send you a link to YouTube, Bryce, and you can check it out. You may have already heard the call since you said you listened to some of the broadcast, but Jeff had a tremendous call here a couple weeks ago. East Carolina played up at the U.S. Naval Academy, and Owen Daffer, freshman kicker, drilled a 54-yard field goal to win as time expired.
Wow, I didn't hear that one. I don't have many college football friends, but the 4 or 5 I have, I typically listen to all their games every week. So listen to Nick Saban, who I'm friends with at Alabama, Willie Fritz from Tulane. Grew up listening to Brian Barnhart doing Illinois games. I still listen to them. Listen to Don Fisher commentating the Indiana Hoosiers games as well in football and basketball. But definitely whenever college basketball starts, I get really busy because I try to listen to all of my friends' games, whether it be in men's basketball or in women's basketball.
And Bryce, you've already referenced on this a little bit, and you're talking about some of the broadcasters that you really thought highly of and that developed your love for broadcasting. But just talk about, go back to your childhood, and what were some of those things that really made you have that interest in sports?
I think it was just finding games on the radio and just being able to understand what was going on because of the descriptions that the broadcasters would say about the game. Still, when I have to listen on television now, if someone's watching a game, for the most part, I still have no idea what's going on. Now, there are a few broadcasters who will do their television broadcast more as in a radio style broadcast, describing more of what's happening, who has the ball, who took a shot, who may have hit the ball, if it's baseball or softball, but that happens less and less on television.
Absolutely. And, just talk about, tell our listeners, there's a YouTube video that they can check out. I'll certainly share that on my social media, but, describe for our listeners and viewers the process of preparing for a game and then actually calling a game. tell them how you would go about it, because I know it was something that you would really like to develop a feel for the setting, and go out and take a few shots on the court and things like that before a game.
In the process of preparing for a game, I would spend 15 to 16 hours, and those hours would include speaking to each team's head coach. Hopefully he or she would talk to me. Sometimes the opposing coach wouldn't. Or in one case, when I was doing games in the past, the home team's coach never had an interest in talking to me. So that was interesting. But try to get through that and just learn facts on the players and the coaches. I will study the style of the play-by-play broadcaster that I'm commentating with to determine whether he or she tells a lot of stories or if they give stats on players and coaches. And I will tailor my broadcasting style to do whatever it is that the play-by-play broadcaster does not do well or does not do, so that he or she can have the best sounding broadcast that I can possibly give them. So then I research information on the players from both teams. And if I'm commentating basketball or whichever sport, I will listen to each team's previous couple of games. So I know their styles, their tendencies, what happened in the past game especially. So for the opposing team, I hope they don't play on the same night as the home team for the previous game, so I can listen to each team's previous game. Otherwise, I'll have both of them on at once, one game on my laptop and one game on my phone. I listen to two games all the time, so it's something that I'm used to, and I've had to do that a few times in the past when both teams are playing at the same time, or they may start 60 to 90 minutes later from each other. And then when I'm doing basketball, I will go out before the game and shoot free throws on the court to figure out how the ball bounces off the rim, if the rims are loose or tight. I'll also make sure that they have a good crowd microphone hooked up on the pad underneath the basket so I can hear the ball clanking off the rim or squishing through the net. That really helps when I'm doing a basketball broadcast to analyze what is going on. When I'm doing soccer, baseball, or softball, it's important to have a good crowd microphone by the field so that I can either hear the umpire calling the pitch, a ball, or a strike, or hear the goalkeeper directing his or her defense where to go on the field.
Absolutely. Very interesting. And, I had the opportunity to check out that YouTube video that I referenced. I know our listeners and viewers will enjoy that short clip as well. But tell us about your educational background, because I know you have multiple degrees and as well as a master's degree in sports administration. So, tell us where you attended school for earning both of those degrees.
At the University of Evansville from 2010 to 2014, I studied sports management and sports broadcasting. And then my master's degree came from Western Illinois, which I received in 2016.
Very good. And, taking a look at it, one of the things that really impressed me about your story, Bryce, is just your positive spirit and attitude. And one of the things that you really emphasize is, being passionate for a purpose. And, kind of along with that, your ability to achieve at a high level and share your words of wisdom and your experiences with others. That's something that you really pride yourself in doing, where they can make the most of themselves as well. So just talk about some of the things you've done. I know you've been a disability consultant with the Baltimore Orioles.
I've helped out the Orioles since 2016, so I've helped them become the first team in sports to wear Braille on their jerseys to show the importance of people who are blind learning how to read Braille. That happened during a 2018 home game against the Toronto Blue Jays. I've also helped their front office staff with other programs, such as helping to make their social media accessible for all disabilities. I'm currently helping out 3 other companies as well as a disability consultant: EverFi, who does educational courses; Gray Television, who is one of the largest local television station owners in the country; and a company called Latch, who creates products that can unlock doors with your phone. So apartment building doors, office building doors, wherever you want to install Latch products. I'm helping to make their product, their app, their social media, and their website accessible for people with disabilities. But going to me giving speeches for a few moments, The first speech that I ever gave was in December 2012 to Murray State, who was then coached by Steve Prohm, former head coach at Iowa State. And Coach Prohm and his racers were really inspired and changed by my speech. They ended up beating Evansville that next day, a Saturday in December 2012. But after the game, Coach Prohm and his Murray State team came down and shook my hand and gave me a hug and thanked me for speaking to them. And they also had me to Murray, Kentucky during the 2013-2014 season to sing the national anthem before their home game against Coach Marty Simmons' Evansville team. And I was on the Evansville bench for that road game at Murray State. But really seeing how Coach Prohm and his racers team reacted to my speech, that's led me to speaking to sports teams such as Texas San Antonio, UTSA. I've spoke to Valparaiso men's basketball whenever Bryce Drew was there. On the company side of things, I've given speeches to Lionsgate Entertainment, to the Big Ten Conference, to the Big Ten Network, a whole wide range of companies and sports teams. And that all started with Coach Prohm and his players really being impacted by my speech. Had they not shown they were really impacted, I'm not sure if I would have continued speaking to groups or not.
And it's funny you bring up that name, Bryce Drew. Excellent memories of him when they ran that play and they called Pacer against Ole Miss to upset the Rebels in the first round of the NCAA tournament back in 1998, I believe it was. I guess I was a junior in high school at the time. But just talk about, you referenced Nick Saban, Willie Fritz, Bryce Drew. I mean, all these different teams, be it football, basketball, that you've had the opportunity to speak to. So just talk about how some of those opportunities arose and just kind of the highlights, if you would, and kind of outline the key points of your speeches.
Well, for every single thing I've mentioned to you, whether it's my disability consulting work or how I became friends with these coaches, is that I either found their contact information on the internet, so email is the best way to track these individuals down, or I figured out the email format, say for Gray Television or for EverFi, which is how I became their disability consultants, or for Coach Saban, I figured out how I could email him because he doesn't have a typical University of Alabama email. But after figuring out email formats for 7 years now with companies, sports executives, and sports leagues, I basically know the ways to figure out email formats. And that's basically what I do every day, is I figure out email formats for whoever I want to contact that day. Speeches, I'll speak on whatever topic a company or a sports team wants, whether it be helping them to become more accessible, speaking about my life and overcoming obstacles and challenges. Oftentimes, a coach of a sports team will have me speak about showing his or her players the value of never giving up and of valuing the opportunity that they're given, being thankful for what they're able to do and how they're able to play at a high level because so many people do not have that chance, and just really being gracious for what they're able to do.
Through your conversations with these companies, various businesses, organizations like the Baltimore Orioles, just give us a glimpse behind the scenes. What are some of the primary issues that you're tackling? I'm sure, it's not, obviously, a lot of times, I'm sure there may be times where it is, but it's not, I guess, ignorance, for lack of a better way of putting it, or just maybe a lack of attention to detail. But just what are some of the main issues that you have to address when you're doing the work that you do as a consultant to make things more accessible for those with various disabilities?
Just understanding how to run a comprehensive program for people with disabilities. So first, understanding you should make the website and the social media accessible as quickly as possible, because those are items that can be viewed or taken in by everyone in the world and the country. So the quicker those are made accessible, then you can work on other programs such as hiring people with disabilities for employment, and then really understanding that companies most oftentimes have no idea how to run a program to hire people with disabilities for employment. So I have to teach them how to do that, such as setting a budget to hire people with disabilities, how to properly ensure that jobs are accessible, then also ensuring that their workspace is accessible for all disabilities. Just a big process, and it's important to have buy-in from somebody in the top 5 to 10 people on a leadership team, whether that be of a sports team or a company.
Absolutely. And you talk about that relationship with Nick Saban, with everything Coach Saban has accomplished. I know that connection, I'm sure, has served you well as a lot of the other contacts you've made. And, taking a look at it, one of the biggest things that I know you're involved in is the Beautiful Lives Project. So if you would talk about the founding of that organization and that organization's mission and so forth.
I became friends with Anthony Icavone, the owner of the New Britain Bees, in May of 2017 when I emailed Anthony and I told him how I would like to be able to give back and to help people with disabilities to experience sports and other programs throughout the country. And Anthony was owning the New Britain Bees baseball team at that point in time. They were a member of the Atlantic League through the end of the 2019 season. And Anthony had me out to New Britain, where I was able to commentate New Britain Bees games on their internet streamed broadcast. I was also able to do programs where people with disabilities could play on the field with the New Britain Bees players and coaches. And we have since expanded those programs into giving people with disabilities the opportunity to learn programs in art, such as painting or sculpture, or even performing with a cheerleading team or a dance team, as we did at East Carolina a couple of years ago. And we've done these type of programs throughout the country in Texas, North Carolina. I've done some events in Chicago. I've done events where people with disabilities can play on the court with my friend Jamie Dixon and his Texas Christian basketball team. I've done the same type of an event with the Pennsylvania Quakers, where people with disabilities have been able to play on the court with Steve Donahue's basketball team. And also done some programs where people with disabilities can perform with cheerleading as well as dance teams.
You talk about your visit. I mentioned earlier in the conversation my love of East Carolina athletics. So tell us about your trip to Greenville. And like you mentioned, you did some work with the ECU dance team, where they had some various individuals from the Greenville community or the greater Greenville area, come out to one of the Parks and Recs facilities, I believe.
So I personally did not come to the East Carolina event. One of our staff members who lives in the North Carolina area came to that event, but I basically decided one year I was going to email every cheerleading and dance coach in the country and try and do a program where people with disabilities could perform with their cheerleading team or learn a cheer or a dance. And the East Carolina dance coach was gracious enough to email me back and say that would be something she would enjoy doing, and her dance team as well. And then after getting that interest from her, I then found individuals with disabilities from the Parks and Recreation Department there in Greenville to take part in that program. And everybody had a great time. They made great videos, actually, and it's still a video we show of events that we've done with cheerleading and dance teams in the past.
So even though you didn't make the trip to Greenville, you obviously have had the opportunity to make a number of trips through your connection with Evansville basketball, be it the men's or women's side of things. And you talked about that trip to Murray State, but what are some of your favorite trips and favorite places you've had the opportunity to go down through the years, whether it's as a result of being connected to athletic teams or just in general?
As far as Beautiful Lives Project, every time that I'm able to be at a Beautiful Lives Project event, I'm thankful for that. I don't get to go to as many as people think that I do, because we try to spend all of the funds that we raise to support people with disabilities, to help them to purchase items that might be needed for an event, such as sign language interpreters, specialized equipment. So we're always raising funds, and so I don't normally go to as many trips so that we can get the individuals with disabilities the items that they need to be successful. And if there's anyone who'd like to donate, all of the funds that we raise goes back to support what we do for people with disabilities. And our website is beautifullives.org. But probably two of the favorite places that I've been were Hinkle Fieldhouse, when I became friends with Brad Stevens in 2009. That's a very legendary gym, and that's where the closing scene of the movie Hoosiers was filmed. So you went to the Knightstown gym where they filmed almost every scene of Hoosiers except for the last one. I've never been there, but I've been to Hinkle Fieldhouse where they filmed the last few scenes where they played the historic championship game, referencing back to the 1954 team. And so that was really great, being able to shoot free throws with Brad Stevens. That was fun in 2009. 2010, I got to sing the national anthem whenever Evansville played at Butler. Evansville actually won that day. I enjoyed that. 2016, when I first started doing my work as Baltimore's disability consultant, getting to go to Camden Yards and throwing out a first pitch to my good friend Paul Molitor, who's the former Minnesota Twins manager. That was a lot of fun. Never thought that I'd be able to throw out a first pitch. And just every Beautiful Lives Project event that I'm at, whether it's something with baseball, or I personally really enjoy the ones where individuals with disabilities can take part with cheerleading teams, dance teams, or other teams throughout women's athletics, such as women's basketball, women's soccer, or softball, because those teams and coaching staffs do not get the coverage they should, unfortunately.
That's awesome. I had no idea until this interview that you had sang the national anthem on multiple occasions, as you've referenced, and I know that had to be a really awesome experience for you.
I've sang the national anthem about 10 times in my life before sporting events. The first time was in 2003 or 4, before Olney Central College played Vincennes University in a non-conference game, and Vincennes had a former NBA player on their roster, Carl Landry, who later played for Purdue and then played in the NBA for a little bit. So that was the first time that I sang the national anthem. Whenever I was at Evansville, I sang it at least once a year for my 4 years there. I sang it at Western Illinois both years whenever I was in graduate school as well.
Earlier in the interview, I talked about your positivity, just the way you have such a refreshing approach to life. But just talk about, where that positive attitude and, your willingness to share with others and do everything you can to benefit other people. Talk about where that's rooted.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry I forgot to answer that part of the question earlier. I got so wrapped up in the other parts you asked me of the question that I forgot that one. So being positive really comes from being thankful for all of the great people that I have helping me to be successful, whether it's my family, always being willing to take me to Detroit or St. Louis for eye doctor's appointments whenever I was younger, or just my parents really having the courage to raise someone with a disability and really helping me to be successful, or all of the students who really helped me both at Evansville and at Western Illinois with getting my food in the cafeteria, or shooting free throws with me, or just whatever it was that I needed to be successful. People always think that it's more about what I've done in my life, but if it wasn't for the people who I had helping me, I wouldn't be able to have done any of the things that I've done in my life. Because if it wasn't for those individuals, I would not have been able to learn the things that I needed to learn so that I could attempt to live and to fulfill my dreams and my goals in life.
No doubt, and I'm a huge believer in. And you hear this quote on, service is the rent we pay for living here on this earth. Definitely believe that, and definitely admire those who have, done everything they could to help you, as well as everything you do to help other people. And definitely kudos to you for having such a positive outlook on life and going about things the way that you do. Bryce, we've really enjoyed the conversation this afternoon. Would love to have you back on sometime. Before we wrap this up, we have the college football playoff and all the bowl games and getting ready to get cranked up here in the next few weeks. So, they were announced earlier this afternoon. Alabama, after their big upset over Georgia, 41-24 yesterday in the SEC championship game in Atlanta. They claim the number 1 spot. Then you have Michigan as the 2, Georgia is the 3, and then Cincinnati, the underdog there, kind of the darling, so to speak, at number 4. Glad to see the Bearcats get in. They have a heck of a team. What a tremendous job Luke Fickell has done there with Cincinnati in his home state, the Ohio State product, Fickell. But just what are your thoughts on the college football playoff, and how do you think things will turn out?
I mean, I don't really listen to my friends' games, like I said, so Coach Saban's always really supported me. Fans often don't really give him credit for what he does beyond football, but he supports so many people with disabilities at Alabama, helps them get to games so they can see. I know one of my friends, he has trouble with his vision. So I emailed Coach Saban, and they got this individual who has trouble seeing but can see if he's close enough to the field, seats in the third or fourth row behind Alabama's bench so that he could see everything that was going on the field. So I don't really predict games anymore, nor do I have favorite teams anymore, because you were going to ask me about my favorite teams. I just cheer on people who really care about what I'm doing to help others, or who really help others themselves and do not get the credit for it, which Coach Saban definitely doesn't get the credit for how much he does to help others.
Yeah, most definitely. A lot of folks, with Coach Saban, they see the kind of that. They see what they see, in press conferences or on the sideline during games. But when you really, you hear some things with Coach when he's not in the grind of college football season. You see that he's definitely a great person, and has his student athletes' best interest at heart, so on and so forth. But Bryce, it's been awesome. Tell our viewers and listeners how they can subscribe on YouTube to the Beautiful Lives Project, and also where they can find any of your other works, such as your website and the Beautiful Lives Project, that website.
So the Beautiful Lives Project website is www.beautifullives.org. If they'd like to email us to help us with some events, if they have anyone with a disability across the country who'd like to do an event, or if they'd want to host an event, they could email me at bryce@beautifullives.org, BRYCE@beautifullives.org. They could also connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Bryce Weiler. I think I'm listed right now as the Gray Television Disability Consultant, or they can find me. That I'm on Twitter at Bryce Weiler, at capital BRYCE, capital WEILER. They could also find me on Facebook. It's got all of my myriad of jobs listed, from Beautiful Lives Project co-founder to Gray Television to EverFi, everything else. So that's where I'm at, and they can track me down. And I appreciate what you're doing. I know you work hard every week as a teacher, so the fact you want to do this as well really shows your commitment to giving back and helping others. And your students and the other individuals at your school, both staff and the other students, are very fortunate to have you in their lives on a weekly, monthly, and daily basis.
Appreciate your kind words, Bryce. And it's been a pleasure, privilege to have you on the program. Until next time, you've been listening to The Bubba Rose Show. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Take care, everyone.